everybody, it's the Lawn Gnome, and I am very excited today because we are finally at our newest DC animated film live stream, technically, these days. But pre-recording is just as good as live streaming because you just get everything out there that you really want to say. So I'm sure that you are curious because Bryan from Bryan Lomax Movie Talk is not here today, but don't worry, everybody. He is going to be returning very shortly, but I do want to take this time to just officially congratulate him on this specific show, because if it wasn't for him taking the time and putting in the effort to work with me, we wouldn't have this show running for as long as it has been running. And he has recently welcomed his new little boy into his growing family, and I only felt that it was right to give him the opportunity to take some time to get to know the little fella. But fear not, the show does go on today, and I have a fantastic guest joining me today because we are going to be continuing with the 80th anniversary of Batman celebration with some very interesting Batman films. We're not going into the DC Universe line that has been created through the library that started in 2007, rather a different series of films that recently was created. A very interesting blend of nostalgia based around TV and comic books for a couple of pieces of media in the lore for some new fans to actually get to share and enjoy. And my guest today is someone who I have recently become friends with in the past year. She is without a doubt one of the more lively and most insightful people that I have found on YouTube in recent years. I was so upset that I didn't get a chance to come into the city to meet her at BookCon, because it would have been a pleasure to just shake her hand and say, thank you for doing what you do. And that, of course, is Margaret from the Word N3rd. That is the Word N3rd with a 3 in the Word N3rd instead of an E. Margaret, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on my show this evening.
Thank you, Steve. I love that you put the 3 in nerd instead of the E, because that's my sign-off, isn't it? Hi, I'm Margaret. My tagline is I gush about books and Batman over on my channel, The Word N3rd. I love Batman. He's been a part of my life since I was like 6. So I've been following this character for quite a while. So I'm gonna give it back to Steve.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy to know that we are actually celebrating a hero that has been in popular culture for 80 years. And it's just amazing how many incarnations we have seen. But I will definitely say that Bruce Timm giving us Batman the Animated Series in 1991-92 was definitely a great thing that I truly believe was needed for Batman fans.
I love that. That is the series that actually got me into Batman. If you don't know me, this is the first time you're hearing from me, I was obsessed with Catwoman at the age of 4, and that has not stopped. And because of that obsession, I think it goes back to like a little McDonald's toy that I got. Since that obsession, I remember that series. It was a key part of my childhood growing up. Like the Batman, and then all of the ones that he did afterwards with Superman, and then there was Spider-Man. So like, I have so many memories around that show.
Yeah. There are just so many amazing things to say about it, and just the universe that Bruce Timm was able to create through it.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw writing for an animated series that was most of the time intended for kids. But one of the few things that I really liked was that after Justice League was about to come to an end, the last season was something that Bruce Timm felt that he just had to do because he didn't know he was going to have another season after a beautiful episode called Epilogue, which tied Batman Beyond all the way into Batman the Animated Series in such a beautiful way. And he said, okay, we have another season. Let's just give the fans something to gush about. Let's bring the Legion of Doom back, you know?
Oh, I love it when they do stuff like that, when they put stuff that's in there, like, not just for the story, but for the fans. because it really shows that they appreciate us and they understand like what gets to us.
Right. So speaking of nostalgia, as I was saying, crazy to believe that in 2007, they decided to go a new route with their animation and start giving us some stories that were adapted from some of the greatest comic book stories in DC of all time. And not just that, really giving something to the fans that grew up with Batman the Animated Series and other DCAU stuff, a real way to truly appreciate and see the kinds of ways that the bars of animation could be pushed. But in 2016, they decided to create a second library called the DC Animated Movie Library, not the DC Animated Original Universe Library. I don't even know if I'm getting it right, but that's just what I believe it is.
DC has so many universes at this point, like you just have to pick the one you like and go with it.
So they started off this library with something that I never, in my wildest dreams, would have ever thought possible. But when I saw that it was actually happening, you couldn't have seen me all the more excited, because you already told everybody how you got into Batman. I was introduced to Batman from two different directions. The Super Friends Hanna-Barbera series, including the new Scooby-Doo movies, which did feature Batman and Robin a couple of times, but more importantly, the 1966 Adam West and Burt Ward television show. I loved that show as far back as I could remember. I own the movie, and knowing that this new library was going to start off with Batman, The Return of the Caped Crusaders, and having Adam West and Burt Ward and Julie Newmar return to voice their original Batman counterparts, I didn't even know how excited I felt when I heard that this movie was coming.
Yeah, I remember. I haven't seen the entire series, but my friend and I, who's also a Batman fanatic, she and I sat down and watched the 1966 movie, and that was a wild trip. It really was a different era for Batman. Like, looking at the 60s and anything probably before the 80s is just so, like, it's so lighthearted and like hopeful. And it was really nice to see a different side of Bruce that I don't think we've seen very much in the last couple of decades.
Absolutely. I mean, also it took part in what was going on with the comic industry at the time, because in the 1950s we got the Comics Authority Code, and that was also when a lot of the characters were starting to go in a different direction, more of a child-friendly, campy sort of tone. So it was only appropriate that Batman would actually get this kind of persona when he had his very first live-action television show.
Yeah.
So what was your overall reaction after watching this specific movie? And then we'll go into any details. Or did you have any serious expectations or anticipations?
It's been a really long time since I saw the live action movie. So I had a slight idea of what I was going to get going into it, but there was so much of it that I had just forgotten. It is so over the top and ridiculous in places, but it's in a way that works for the medium that it is being told in, because I don't think this could have worked in anything other than like that 60s kind of feeling. It was really fun to see, like, have these voice actors, especially knowing that Adam West is gone. Like, there was just a like, really, like, every time he would talk, I just like, oh my gosh, this is sad.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that a little bit later, especially when we discuss the follow-up. But yeah.
But I really like that they had such iconic villains for especially this particular movie. Like the ones that you think of when you think of Batman, which is Penguin, Riddler, Joker, Catwoman. All of those were in here. So I like that they were able to work them all into the plot.
Yeah, I definitely would say that when I popped this DVD in, I didn't even hear about what people thought about it for anything or reviews, because there are certain things that when I know that they're coming out, it's a day one buy for me no matter what, because even if I don't like it, I'm still going to be glad that I've seen it and know that it's part of my collection, because Bruce Timm is one of my idols. It's something that I just need to capitalize on whenever something new comes out. So I will say that when the opening credits starts and you hear that classic Batman theme, it just you get excited. You're just, because it's something that you know that you love, as cringy as it is, you still love it to death. I still remember when my wife, who actually was my girlfriend at the time, insisted on me when I was coming over to spend the weekend at her parents' to bring that movie with me because she wanted to watch it for the first time in a long time. And we did. We were in the living room, and my father-in-law comes in and he looks at the screen and he's like, "Why are you guys watching this?" And lo and
That sounds like my dad.
and lo and behold, 2 minutes later, he actually comes back into the living room and sits down and finishes the movie with us.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, the cringe is part of the fun, though, because it's so campy. Like, it's one of those things that it's part of the vibe and part of why you watch it, because, like, even if it is cringy, it's still entertaining, and it works with the story. That was the thing that I really liked, is that it worked with, they found a story that was as ridiculous and over the top as the actual, like, the things that they were saying. Like, they found a story that works with Holy Shark Repellent Batman, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's one of the other things that I have to get into right now when it comes to Adam West and Burt Ward reprising their roles. When you hear Adam West as Batman in this movie, you can tell that he is saying each and every one of these lines with a massive smile on his face. You can totally tell that Adam West is just living it up in this movie, in this role, once again. You can hear it in his voice. I mean, one of my favorite parts of this movie is pretty much in the beginning, and he's giving Robin a lesson in jaywalking. And I just love how he goes, "Quickly, old chum, to the crosswalk," and then they actually wave at people as they're crossing the street. It's one of the funniest parts of the whole movie, and it's like, that is 1966 Batman in a bottle right there.
Yeah, that was really. I feel like I need to point out the hilarity of a man named Burt Ward playing Bruce Wayne's Ward. I just, like, I looked at that and it made me laugh.
Yeah, that's actually very funny. I didn't even think about that. What a nice little nugget there. I like that.
But yeah, that was hilarious to me, because I'm just sitting there going, oh my goodness, that is so 60s Batman, because that is not something, it was interesting to see Bruce to be such a rule follower in this movie, and we'll get, and same as for the next one, because that's not what we see in him a lot in the comics now. He's a lot more of a vigilante versus someone who is actually, like, working with the cops. I mean, he works with the cops, but he doesn't follow, if he has to break a few rules to get what needs done, he's going to. And then we have this version of Batman who's like, wait, we can't jaywalk.
Yeah, I love it. Now, I think one of the things that I did want to ask to you was in regards to the voices of the original cast that actually came back. I wanted to know what your overall feelings were about them reprising their roles, because obviously at this time, you know, they're not as young as they used to be. Do you think that played in a little bit to the overall feelings that you got through the movie? Because in my personal opinion, I know that you're a huge Catwoman fan, but for myself, I really didn't feel in this movie, and even in the next movie, I didn't feel that Julie Newmar really fit in it at this time.
Oh, thank God. I felt, okay, so here's the thing. Just from what I can recall and the thing that I was getting, Burt Ward and Adam West did a fantastic job with the voice acting. I felt like Julie Newmar didn't quite make the right choices, because she sounded like someone's grandma. Yes. Like yes. She sounded like her age, and you could hear Burt Ward and Adam West making the effort to sound like they had before then. Now, I don't remember I don't even know do you know who was Catwoman in the 1966 movie?
Catwoman was in the 1966 movie, but Julie Newmar did not play her. Lee Merriweather played her.
Okay, because I know there have been 3, and so I was sitting there thinking, like, she just didn't fit with anything that I associated with Selena. Obviously, she's a little bit more high class in this movie than we see her in some of the later stuff, but her voice didn't quite fit, and I feel like that was mostly an acting choice thing. I feel like the woman has the talent to be able to do that. I just don't think she made that choice.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you because I just didn't think that she was as lively as Adam West and Burt were. Like, I literally was
Exactly.
expecting her to like go behind a wall when the cameras were off and then just go get her arthritis pills or something like that because she just, oh, I'm so
Oh, that's
sorry.
mean.
I'm so sorry.
You're right. That's,
I didn't want you to do that.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm fine.
Wow.
That's hilarious, though.
Yeah, I just feel, but I felt really bad because, you know, as someone who loves watching the reruns and loves the movies, like, I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect. I mean, one of the things that you also have to say in regards to this movie is, you know, you wish that this could have been around when Burgess Meredith, Cesar Romero, and Frank Gorshin were alive, because if they were able to reprise these roles as well, I think that they would have all had a blast. But I have to give so much credit to the staff of this movie because, my God, the people that they found to fill those shoes, they all did such a great job. Like, I really felt like these greats were there again. Like, when I heard the guy, I don't even know the name of the actor off the top of my head, but the guy who voiced the Joker, the laugh, it sounded like Cesar Romero's laugh from the show. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Hold on, I feel like I know who that was because I saw it and it surprised me. But that's one of the nice things about voice acting is that there is so much room for you to throw your voice to make it sound like someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that especially when it comes to Batman animation, the one person who knows how to do that so well is Troy Baker, who actually voices the Joker in the Arkham games, and he sounds just like Mark Hamill. And the funniest thing is, in Batman versus TMNT, he is the one that's voicing Batman, and he sounds like Kevin Conroy. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But that's what I agree with. I mean, like, whenever somebody says voice actors are not truly acting, I say that that's bull. I say
that's bull crap.
You have no idea how much effort it takes to give life to a drawing that starts out with just pencil sketches. You have no idea how much effort and how much blood, sweat, and tears are put into a person's voice to bring that character to life.
And a lot of bringing that character to life is dependent on that actor's performance of them. Because if I remember correctly, what I know from animation is they have ideas, like a lot of them, they'll have an idea of what the character looks like. They'll be shown sketches and everything, but the characters aren't animated until the voice actors give them the material that they need, and they've pieced that together.
Exactly. It's like when I watch a DVD, because I know that before we actually went on air, we were talking about some Studio Ghibli films. I love in the DVD special features how they have those behind the mic sessions. So you actually see the actors doing so. And even on the special features of these DVDs, for the DC animated films, you actually do get some sneak peeks and you actually see these voice actors doing their job. And I love it when you see Kevin Conroy or Clancy Brown or Mark Hamill doing this work. And you can totally see how much fun they're having and just how they just love doing what they do as voice actors.
And you're having to put just as much emotion and physicality into it. Without people seeing, like you're only seeing half the or hearing half the work when you're watching an animated film, because it's not like they can just stand there doing nothing as they say these lines. Like, they have to get into it.
Exactly. And when it comes to the overall story of this specific movie, I really appreciated the direction that the film went into. I mean, first and foremost, the nostalgia of Batman is everywhere in this movie. And I think that if you are a huge Batman fan, you know, how big of a Batman fan you are, the bigger you are, the more nostalgia will just hit you like a brick.
I appreciate, I think it's this one that I'm thinking of. I really appreciated the moment where he gets knocked out or whatever it was, and Catwoman separates to 3 different people, and it's Lee Merriweather, Eartha Kitt, and Julie Newmar. And I was just like, oh, that's such a great throwback.
I was so glad you brought that up as well. also love, because that was going to be one of the things I was going to bring up, but I also loved how they got all of these up. I mean, like, honestly, I wish that Eartha Kitt would have come to voice herself for that one little role in this movie, because it just would have been so cool. But I loved how they made sure that the person who did the perfectly, like the real role. Exactly what she did in the show when she played Catwoman. It was fantastic. I loved that. And I also loved all of the henchmen that they had. They were all takeoffs of some of the older Batman episodes. I also loved how it was sort of a mishmash of all of their henchmen together in one.
It was. I really like the fact that, like, it was such an out there plot. Like, there really was no actual, like, they didn't even try to base it, like, in science. A lot of the more modern Batman stories will be based in science or the mythology of the world, and they just went for it. They're just like, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna go to the moon, and we're gonna do this, and I was just like, we're gonna clone people. I just appreciate. I felt like it really worked for the era and the storyline that they were working with. Exactly. I loved it.
Yeah, because that's one of the few things that the Batman comics did in the 50s and 60s. They really captured more of the science and fantasy elements rather than a true-to-life vigilante style of storytelling. But at the same time, they also do something a little bit new mixed in with the nostalgia. The whole thing that actually happens to Batman in this movie is definitely something that I didn't see coming, but I also was very happy with the direction that it took. Like, I love the fact that this family-friendly persona of Batman gets dark. And the whole thing where he fires Alfred and he yells at Aunt Harriet, and then he becomes more dangerous than the villains. And not just that, when he uses Michael Keaton's line, "You want to get nuts, let's get nuts," dying. And then right after that, he takes a line from The Dark Knight Returns. "This is the operating table and I'm the surgeon." I'm like, I cannot believe they're doing this. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I like that. It was interesting because it felt like a little bit of a kind of a detour from where we were going with the plot, because we're doing one thing and then we're going to space and then we're doing this thing where Batman has all of these different versions of himself. But the way they tied it all together was really good. I like the fact that anytime you explore a superhero's darker side, I really enjoy that, because it is such a fine line between being a hero and a villain in these worlds, because there's so little room for you a lot of the time in what Bruce is doing before he becomes the bad guy.
Yeah, and you also have to, and it also really brings out the humanity of the character, which is also very important, because when a character shows that human side, it's so much more relatable, and it does leave a very lasting impression. So, is there anything specific in this movie that you didn't like? Because I have a couple of small little nitpicks, but I don't think that they necessarily take away from the film as a whole.
I think the plot could have been a little bit more streamlined. There were just a few moments that I thought they didn't quite, for me as a viewer at least, they lost my attention. But I feel like my biggest pet peeve with this movie is the sexism that they brought in when it came to Catwoman. There were just a couple of lines that didn't even add to the plot. They didn't add to the characters. They were just there to be there. And I was just like, that frustrated me a little bit, because they didn't need to be there. They weren't necessary for the story. And I understand that when this was being made in the 60s, that might have fit in with that show, and that's something you might see in the show. But just because it's something you might see in the show does not mean that it needs to be in what we're bringing to the modern era. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And yeah, I agree with you. I think that one of the issues that I had with this movie was it felt a little long-winded at a certain point in time.
Yes.
Now, don't get me wrong. I loved it when we got to the climactic battle scene when all the other famous villains were broken out of the prison. I mean, like, I actually was able to point out everybody there. Like, I pointed out Bookworm, I pointed out Minstrel, I pointed out Archer, and the Mad Hatter, and the Clock King, Mr. Freeze, Egghead, although I wish that Egghead would have had somebody to try and imitate Vincent Price. That would have just been Shame, or Zelda the Great, Black Widow. They were all there. It was just so good to see all of these villains in one place, even for such a short amount of time. But along with that, there were two small things that like, again, they didn't take away from the movie, but I didn't like the fact that they made Commissioner Gordon look like Commissioner Gordon from the comic books and not from the television show, because Commissioner Gordon in the television show doesn't have a mustache. And the other, yeah, and the other one is this Batman doesn't fight at night; he fights during the day. And like, I was okay with the fact that they were just trying to go a little bit of an extra mile and shake a couple of things up a little bit, but I don't know, just I love that show so much, so I guess I just had those tiny little nitpicks, but I said they really didn't take away from the film as a whole. I agree with you on the fact that there were certain points where I was like saying, this is going a little bit longer than I thought that it would.
Yeah. There were definitely like, and it was like in between action that I just felt like it was one too many scenes to make the point. Like the scene, like it wasn't that the scene wasn't necessary, it was that the scene stretched on just a little bit too long. So, and I don't know how much of that was them just trying to get in the nostalgia factor and I wasn't getting it, and how much of that was just like they were just going because they could.
Yeah, I was like, by the time they basically said, okay, now we're going to space, I was like, why is this movie not over yet?
That was probably the hardest part for me. I was like, why did they go to space? They did not need to go to space.
Yeah.
I don't think it happened in Gotham.
I basically realized later on in my life, wow, they literally just ripped off Moonraker, and even back then it didn't work. Yeah, but that's not even part of this show. But anyway, so at the end of the day, based on your own personal rating system on your channel, how would you rate this movie?
Okay, so I rate out of 5 stars. So I would rate this a 3, which is I enjoyed it, but it's not necessarily something I would visit again.
Okay, see, I would give it a 3.5 just because of the fact that I have revisited it again. And I absolutely love revisiting it just because of the fact that it was just such an impactful piece of my childhood and my love for Batman in general. And also, you know, just because of the fact that it was so nice to just see Adam West come back to voice Batman, just because of the fact that he was Batman. He got ridiculed. He never got another great acting job in his movie career. People made fun of him. People said that he was a joke. Then Seth MacFarlane makes Family Guy, and he brings Adam West back, and then everybody believes that Adam West is a golden god. And what better way to just basically show everybody how his career could come full circle by playing Batman again.
Yeah. I didn't know any of that about Adam West, but yeah, I did. It was one of those that, like, a 3-star for me is I enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it, but it's not necessarily something that I need to revisit. I feel like this isn't something like I appreciate it, but it's not something that I need in my personal collection.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll give you a small fun fact. I don't even know if you did notice this, but in the first season of Batman the Animated Series, there's an episode called Beware the Grey Ghost. And the Grey Ghost was voiced by Adam West. So,
oh my God.
No, thinking back to that episode of Batman the Animated Series, I'm quite surprised that I didn't see a project like this coming at the end of the day. You know?
Yeah, I need to rewatch the animated series. It's been on my list for a while.
I know. I mean, they're literally right over there behind me, right up there on the shelf above Kang and Kodos from San Diego Comic-Con that I just recently got.
Yeah.
Yeah, Batman the Animated Series. I have the whole series on DVD. It's wonderful. And also, I'm going to be rewatching Batman the Mask of the Phantasm very soon, and I'm really excited to watch that movie. But anyway, we were not done in regards to this specific incarnation of Batman, because this movie, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, got a sequel. A very interesting sequel, because there's a story behind this specific movie. Apparently, there were plans to bring one specific Batman villain that is well known in the comics and in Batman lore to the Adam West show back in 1966, and that was Two-Face. But they had a story. They had an idea of what the character was going to be and look like in the episode that he was going to be in, and possibly another episode or two, who knows. But the executives at ABC said this character will scare children. So this is known as the lost episode of the Adam West Batman show. And who better than Bruce Timm and company and his staff at the Warner Brothers Studios to finally give us the Batman episode that could have been in Batman versus Two-Face.
Okay, and thank you so much for giving us that story, because I actually was looking it up to see if Two-Face had come after the series had played. I was like, I could have sworn he's been around since almost the beginning, because like, just all of that, like, because we got his backstory. I was like, this is interesting that we're getting his backstory. So knowing that, I think I remember somebody saying something about that being the last episode, but I had forgotten that until you mentioned it.
Yeah, because, you know, I remember when I was growing up and, you know, loving the Batman show so much. I mean, to this day, my favorite villain in all of Batman is the Riddler. I just always loved the Riddler.
Mm-hmm.
And I love all the incarnations that he has been. Yes, even Jim Carrey. I do like Jim Carrey as the Riddler, too.
Listen, Jim Carrey was great. That movie was a campy mess, but Jim Carrey was great as the Riddler. They did some quality casting choices. They just
I know.
screwed it up with costuming and tone.
I just wish that Joel Schumacher would have just done some justice for him, because one of the few things that I knew that they would have done was Robin Williams could have been the Mad Hatter, and that would have been golden.
Oh, now I'm sad.
I know, especially considering the fact that we got Roddy McDowall as Mad Hatter in the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what a great voice casting choice for that character. But anyway, so Adam West and Burt Ward, and yes, even Julie Newmar do come back in Batman vs. Two-Face. But oh man, we got to play Two-Face. Who better than William Shatner?
He did such a good job. Like, he's William Shatner. He is perfect for this kind of era of acting and voice acting. And I loved how well he was able to do the two different characters that you have when you are confronting Two-Face. Like, his Two-Face voice was so good.
I know. And it's also, and quite frankly, I would personally say that from a story standpoint, this one might actually be better than Return of the Caped Crusader. There were so many well-placed twists in this story. And I have to say, this was also such a sad movie to watch because it is the very last performance of Adam West. But what a great way for him to go. What a great way. You know, I always say that when a famous actor or actress in Hollywood goes, I get so upset if the last movie that they made or the last TV show that they were in was just a complete disaster. Like, I think a perfect example would be Raul Julia, who played Gomez in the Addams Family movies. To know that his last performance was M. Bison in the Street Fighter movie is such a disheartening thing to feel. But knowing that Adam West left this world doing what he loved, playing the character that he adored, and it was a storybook ending for this great actor of popular culture.
Yeah, I know. I went into it because I knew he was gone, and so both of these are very nostalgic for me because of knowing he was gone. But I agree with you about the storyline. They didn't lose me nearly as well as the storyline in Return of the Caped Crusaders. Like, Two-Face kept me. Was it predictable? Yes, because I have read so many of the comics. I know Two-Face, like, I know how Two-Face stories go, but they still did such a good job of crafting that story that even though I knew where it was going to go, it was still entertaining. You know, It was still about how did we get there? Why do we get there? All of that.
Yeah, and I didn't actually finish my thought when I was talking about Batman villains. So knowing all the villains that I had in the Batman series, I even remember getting Batman coloring books and actually seeing this character. I'm like, who is this? I don't know who this character is. So when I started actually reading comics when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I finally, and Batman the Animated Series, of course, I found out who Two-Face was, because Bruce Timm also did wonders with Two-Face in that.
Oh, yeah.
Such a human fall from grace in Harvey Dent. And it was and in this movie, he gets that exact same fall from grace in the only way that you can through the Batman 66 lens.
Yeah, that was a really interesting take. I want to say, like, might be a slightly controversial opinion, but I feel like Harvey Dent and Two-Face are actually the villain that represents is the most like mirror of Batman, because you have Bruce Wayne who has these two sides and has made them work and used them for good, and then you have Harvey Dent who has these two sides and he is struggling, and he is such like he's like a personification of some of like the struggle that you see going on in Bruce. Two-Face is actually one of my more preferred villains. I'm not the biggest fan of the Joker just because he's so overdone. Mm-hmm. So to know that he has his own movie just made me really, really excited and happy that they got around to doing this.
Well, I definitely think that some of the aspects of this comparison, I think you should definitely write them down for a future show, because this could be a great discussion, whether it was with, hey, look, this could be a great excuse for me to actually do another live show with you about Batman.
I'm down for any live shows about Batman, but like people like to talk like the Joker is the polar opposite of Batman and all of that. But especially in this era where Batman is such a rule follower, Two-Face, the evil side of him, actually represents him much more, I feel, than the Joker, because you have the two sides. You're literally looking at someone who is split down the middle by the two lives that they live. And I think a lot of the time we get that with Bruce, is that he is split down the middle between Bruce Wayne and Batman and what he actually wants.
And now that you say that, to a certain degree, the coin is such an integral thing, because Batman always has to try and figure out how far is it when I officially cross that line. Mm-hmm. Two-Face always has to figure out whether he wants to cross the line or not by the chance of his coin. So it's much more of a visual version of a character like Batman's mindset.
Yeah, and the coin makes Two-Face such an unpredictable villain. Like, you know what the Joker is going to do. He's going to cause as much chaos as he can. You know what the Riddler is going to do. But the Two-Face, you never know. Is he going to land on the sides of demons or angels? Like, what is the coin going to say? And that is so fascinating for me.
You know what I think we should totally do? I think a lot, and I'm going to make sure that you host this. We should totally have a whole discussion about Batman and his rogues gallery.
Definitely. I love discussing the Rose Gallery.
I always enjoy talking about his rogues gallery, because it's always crazy to believe that some of these people are actually geniuses that just unfortunately snapped. It's absolutely insane when you take a look at some of them being professors and doctors and scientists. It's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Two-Face. Another thing that I really love about this movie was the fact that we actually got a couple of new villains. Not necessarily, well, by new villains, I don't mean villains that we've never seen before. I'm specifically saying certain villains from the Batman 66 lore that actually have a little bit more of a role in the film. I love the fact that they chose King Tut, because King Tut is such a fun character in the old show.
I actually had no idea that he was a villain until like I saw him in Return of the Caped Crusaders. I was like, I don't know who he's supposed to represent, but then when he came in, and the fact that they used him to kind of parallel Harvey's situation where he's got that split personality, I really thought that was an interesting. I don't know how Bruce didn't figure it out sooner. Modern Bruce would have figured it out sooner anyways, but that's a whole different point. But I like that they used that to parallel the fact, to foreshadow the fact that Harvey is also still struggling with his two different sides.
Right. And we also had Bookworm in the movie, which was also really fun. Also, the guy that they got for voice acting did a very good version of Roddy McDowall, because Roddy McDowall did play Bookworm. And once again, as I said earlier, he also voiced Mad Hatter, so it was great to see Roddy McDowall return to Batman. And, you know, that's one of the few things that I love about the 66 show. They got so many great actors to play alongside Adam West and Burt Ward. I mean, you had everyone from Milton Berle to Joan Collins. I mean, my God, all the people that were some of the most well-known names in Hollywood. Art Carney, I mean, my goodness, the fact that they all took on these roles for this show, that was just so zany and kooky. You have to give them props. You know, you really do. Even Eli Wallach is in that. He was Mr. Freeze, the second version of Mr. Freeze. So fantastic. It really is. But I think probably the most positive of things about this movie is, I'm not gonna lie, this movie kept me guessing till the secret was officially revealed.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the fact that we still see Harvey, because I like the fact that we still see Harvey struggling with that. As I said, I anticipated it because obviously it's Batman versus Two-Face. He's gonna have to, but I like the way that the way that they structured the Two-Face persona, whereas it is something that he has control over whether or not Two-Face comes out. I didn't see that part coming. I wasn't sure how they had fixed him and then Two-Face is back. I actually thought that somehow he had split Two-Face off from his better persona. I thought that's what actually had happened, but then it's still, oh no, they're still the same person.
Right. That again was what I was, to me, part of me was thinking that was exactly how it was going to end, but the way that they led up to it, you still couldn't figure it out. And that's what I really loved about it. They just kept me guessing till the very end, and even though I kind of felt that was going to be the way that it went, I just really appreciated. I think that the strongest part of this movie is the writing. The writing is wonderful in this follow-up.
Oh, it was so good. And the twists and turns and the way they lead up to everything. Like, even having Dick knowing that Two-Face is back, he's still, like, you still totally believe the fact that Harvey is separate from Two-Face. Like, even with that scene, it was so great.
Right, and you know something? I just remembered something, and I don't remember which of these two movies it was in. There was one of the two movies when they were constantly flashing the signal, but at one point it was the Robin logo, and then it was the Catwoman symbol. Like,
oh, they did that in both of them. I noticed that in Return of the Caped Crusaders, because you had the regular Batman logo, you had the inverted Batman logo when he was evil, and you also had Robin's. And so when Robin went off on his own in this movie, you also, again, had the Robin logo. I don't remember Catwoman. That might have been Return of the Crusaders. I don't remember seeing that one.
No. I just remember it being Catwoman. You see like a cat, and you hear like a cat sound. It was actually but once again, outside of all the nostalgia that you get from the 1966 series, there's a couple of other interesting pieces of fan service in this movie. Right off the bat, Harley Quinn is in this movie.
I saw her. I was like, is that? Oh, yeah, that is.
I was like, oh my God. And I love that they made it Dr. Quinzel. I really did like that. But it was just so great to see that. And of course, this whole movie, there's a lot of takeaway from The Dark Knight Returns. Because the first book, in case you guys don't know, of The Dark Knight Returns, the first villain is Two-Face, and it's all about Two-Face being released from Arkham Mental Hospital at the time, and he's completely fixed on the outside, but in the inside, he is still struggling. And at the very end of the first book, you do see the lightning flash, and you see Two-Face's face embodying all of Harvey Dent, and we get a little bit of that in this one as well.
Yeah, this isn't the first time that Harvey has been, that's one of the most interesting things about his character, because this isn't the first time that Harvey has been fixed. Like, they've made him whole again. And it just goes to show you kind of the inner struggle that people face, where that evil is always with us, even if you cannot see it on the outside. I really like the fact that they made that point.
Yeah, and I also do appreciate, the outlandish plot that he had, basically making a world of Two-Faces, it's something that you expect, and even though it's so stupid and so campy, you have to embrace it, because that is 66 Batman in all of its glory. It really is.
That actually felt like more of something the Joker would do than Two-Face to me, because the Joker's always he's always got the laughing gas going on. And I think, I can't remember, wasn't that involved in the gas? He had some of the Joker venom? He did. Okay, you can tell it's been just only 3 days since I watched this movie, but that was an interesting, you could see the Joker's influence there, whether it was intentional, like Harvey was actually trying to emulate him, or whether he'd been manipulated into it. You could see the Joker's influence there.
Right. And I also want to ask you personally, because I actually did enjoy Catwoman in this movie. I thought that bringing the whole romance between Batman and Catwoman into this world. It's a risk. It's definitely a risk, but I think that they did it very well in the second film. I kind of did like the whole concept of Batman visiting Catwoman in prison. It was cute. It was very cute. And I think, yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, the romance between Batman and Catwoman and the push back and forth in the Caped Crusader felt very much like the old comics to me. And then you come into this one where they've actually got a relationship that they're kind of working on. And I really appreciated the fact that, like, you got to see that. That felt a little like there was progress being made. And there's so very seldom is progress made with Batman. I did like her a lot better in this movie, partly because we didn't have those random lines, partly because it felt like she was more a part of the story. Like in Return of the Caped Crusaders, it felt like she was just there to be there, whereas in this one, she actually, like, I loved how she broke out of jail, and then she ends up coming to Batman's rescue, and you always knew that that's what was going to happen. And I thought she felt a lot more like the Selina that I know in the modern era than the other one did.
Right. Yeah, I really did appreciate her character in this specific movie. I think they wrote her a lot better. And I think there was a lot more of a life, shall I say, in Julie Newmar's delivery. Also, the whole thing that happens in this movie when she swaps with the attorney, I believe it is.
I loved that. It was such a Selina thing to do.
But did you know that the attorney was voiced by Lee Merriweather?
No, I had no idea. Yeah, that is a fun Easter egg.
Exactly. And once again, that's what makes these two specific movies so great. Just all the Easter eggs that you get in it as Batman fans of this specific incarnation. It was just such great. These two movies are without a doubt great fan service, but I also really did appreciate the fact that they were not necessarily just about the fan service. They tried to make a couple of interesting twists and turns, and they tried to give us a good story in both of those films. And personally, if I'm gonna rate Batman versus Two-Face, I honestly can't give you a definitive answer on whether I like the other one more than the other. I really will just put them in a perfect balance because it's literally like having to choose between my children. I can't like one of these better than the other. So I would probably give Batman v Two-Face also a 3.5 stars out of 4.
I would still give this one a 3-star, but a much stronger 3-star, I think, than the other one. Like, if I did half stars, it probably would be a 3.5 star because this one was fun. It's not something I feel the need, again, to revisit just because it's so far from what I go to Batman for. But I felt like I spent my time wisely. I mean, it's Batman. Of course I spent my time wisely. But I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the turns. And the way, like you said, I liked that it wasn't just fan service, but it was a true tribute to the fans where they had a plot that they had worked all of that nostalgia into. That is always the best way to kind of do these kinds of movies.
Exactly. As far as I'm concerned, it's the only way to do those kinds of movies. Because otherwise I don't think you have a great movie. And of course, you know, there is a beautiful little tribute at the very end of the credits for Adam West because he did pass away after, I mean, I will say this. Thank goodness he managed to get all of his voice recording done before he left because it's such a challenge to pick up the pieces when you lose a crucial part of your project. I'll tell people something that sort of does connect to Batman because obviously Hanna-Barbera had the Batman license and they did all the Batman and the other DC character shows in the 1970s all the way to the early 1980s. My favorite cartoon of all time is the Jetsons, and I have such a soft spot for Jetsons the movie. George O'Hanlon, the voice of George Jetson till the very end, during his recording of his voice in the movie, he had a stroke. And to make matters worse, this event made him lose his sight.
Oh no.
But he still insisted that he was not gonna abandon this project. This is my character. I'm gonna take it to the very end. And when I was little, I definitely heard certain lines in the movie where his voice sounded a little bit different. Knowing that he passed away, I was saying, did they get a new voice? Did they have to replace him? And apparently the answer was no. He continued to voice his recording of George Jetson after his stroke.
Wow, that's dedication. It's also one of the things you see in actors who really truly love their role. I love the actors that you can tell that they would return to that role at any point in time. Like I'm trying to say his Patrick Stewart. Like him going back to Picard. It's one of those that you can see it truly like changed them and made them who they are as an actor. I do think that it's a little bit easier these days to come back from a setback like that, where maybe one of the actors passed away, because it's so much easier to piece things together nowadays. You can make anybody say just about anything you want them to do.
Exactly. So this has nothing to do with these two films, but there is one little thing that I'm sort of upset about right now when it comes to this library of films. One of my high hopes, knowing that these two movies were made, I wanted to see this crew expand the library and maybe try and capture the nostalgia of some of the other incarnations of the old TV shows. I mean, my dream right now to see an addition to this specific library, I want a Wonder Woman movie. And I want Linda Carter to voice her 1970s counterpart again in this animated film.
And they could totally do that. I'm pretty sure she would come back and do it if they asked her to.
I would love to see them expand this library, take the 1970s Wonder Woman show, do a film that's based around the George Reeves Superman show, even the 3-year or 4-year long Shazam television show that happened in the 70s as well. I would even love to see them try and bring some of the nostalgia back from the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, you know? I feel that seeing those two specific Batman movies, I felt that there is so much room to make some more of these projects. Now, not that I'm saying that I'm upset over the fact that they're really trying to stick with Batman, and also as part of this library, they're also taking their Arrowverse animated films. They're basically taking the shorts on the CW seed and turning them into movies. So also part of this library, and I'm going to be reviewing these films somewhere down the line. They made a movie out of Vixen, The Ray, and Constantine based on the CW and Arrowverse shows in animated form. But I really would love to see these specific things that I just recently mentioned, these old television shows. I'd love to see them try and give that the exact same tender love and care they did for these two Batman films in this library.
Yeah, that actually is a brilliant idea, especially because I love 2D animation. 3D animation is great and everything, but there's just a magic that you have in 2D animation, and the way that you can stylize it in a way I feel you can't stylize 3D animation, because a lot of the time, stuff like Into the Spider-Verse, like on the side, but a lot of the time it's about making everything as realistic as possible and not having that distinctive style that you have in something like the Studio Ghibli films. Like, you know a Studio Ghibli film when you see it. You know Bruce Timm when you see him. Like, that's one of the things I love about 2D animation is you know that animation and where it came from, because it's got that fantastic stylization to it, and I love that about it.
Yeah, I think that even though you can do so many, I mean, Walt Disney said it best, animation can create anything the mind of man can conceive. And we've seen CGI truly go to new heights and be as realistic as it possibly can, to the point where you're actually seeing digital characters in live action movies. I mean, when Spider-Man is spinning through New York City, that's a digital character. And it's
I know.
Real. That gargantuan epic battle in Avengers Endgame is 99.9% CGI, but it's beautiful to look at. But I agree with you. There's something about 2D animation. There's a true love and there's just something about it that is just truly special. And I really feel that when people spend that time sketching those those drawings and then adding the ink to it and then making the animation come to life. I just feel that there's so much more of a tender love and care and blood, sweat, and tears that is poured into these specific animation styles. And I don't believe that people should neglect it. I don't think that people should say, oh, it's the old way of doing things. It may be more time consuming, but I feel at the end of the day, the product, when it's finished, is just a treasure.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned it talking about the old days, because I feel like the public in general actually really likes 2D animation. I feel like the shift that we're seeing in 3D animation and the preference for that has a lot to do with the companies behind this.
I agree.
I think because I don't know whether it's because it's easier or because they want to be innovative or whatever that is, because I feel like most people are still happy with 2D animation. You see that with The Lion King, that people are like, we didn't need another animation of The Lion King, because that's basically what it is. It's CGI. It's a new animation of it. I love the cast. I love the cast that they have. I just don't think they did it as well as previous stuff has done with animals. So it's interesting to see that, because it's not the people are still willing to pay for 2D animation.
I agree. And I even think that when you look back at some of these old movies, whether it's old Disney films or old Universal Don Bluth films, I still feel that you see something special in there. I mean, I was just on That Disney Chick, Cecilia's channel, a few days back, and we talked about the 2000s in Disney animation, and it was amazing to know how many fans there are out there of movies like Treasure Planet and Atlantis Lost Empire.
Atlantis deserves so much better than it got.
I agree.
I'm gonna stop, because this live show will become just about my frustration with how Atlantis was treated.
Another live show idea for you, my friend.
Oh, I have a whole readathon that's going to be around Atlantis at some point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's get into the next film, and I think that this is the one that I'm very intrigued and excited to discuss with you, because it's such a unique standout among the four.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that it was coming, especially when I saw the trailers, I was hooked, because I just had to see the story told. But I didn't really know what the finished product was going to be until I actually saw it, and that, of course, is Batman Ninja. Now, this isn't the first time that anime studios have taken over Batman. The first time that it was done was in 2008, and it was a movie called, and it was part of the DC Animated Original Film Library, and it was the third film, and it was called Batman Gotham Knight. It was 6 interlocking stories by 6 different Japanese anime artists, and it was a film story that was supposed to bridge the gap between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. So this was an animated version of Batman for the first time in Japanese anime style, but also the first time that Christopher Nolan's work was actually going to be portrayed in animation. And it has its highs and its lows, but honestly, I didn't think that it was one of the best Batman films that I ever saw, but I can't deny the effort that was done to bring it to life. Batman Ninja, from an animation standpoint, definitely looked like it was kicked up a notch. And I will say, if there's anything that I could say that's the best part about Batman Ninja, the aesthetics, the animation, the whole production of this world is gorgeous. It is a massive piece of eye candy. I wish that this movie would have actually been on the big screen, because I probably wouldn't have analyzed it so much, because I was just so blown away by what I was watching.
I really liked this one. I have my some slight issues with it, but I really liked, as someone who has been dabbling in different Japanese media since I was a kid. Like, I did Pokemon, I did Digimon, I've done anime. So there were so many throwbacks to things that I recognized from different animes or other different parts of Japanese media. We were discussing this earlier, but despite, with the exception of like only a couple of people, the entire production team seems to have been Japanese people. And I just love the idea that they were just like throwing stuff in there from their culture to make it appeal, like to feel like an anime. And I really appreciated how they did that.
Yeah, I mean, the bright colors, the blend of 2D and CGI. It's absolutely beautiful. And all of the innovative ideas to bring these characters into this world, because it's not just Batman. It's like, you wonder, besides Batman and Joker, there's more of his rogues gallery in this movie.
Yeah.
There's the Gotham Knights are in this movie too. How are they going to transition them into this world? And again, I just appreciated the innovativeness and the creativity. But the story is subpar okay at best. Although I will say, the second time around watching it, I think I enjoyed it a little bit more.
I think the story does meander a little bit on this one. Just like, it goes places that it didn't necessarily need to go. Like, that whole sidetrack that we go with Harley and the Joker in that place where they lost their minds, there really was no need to go there. We could have just had them be off screen for a little while. I did think that the way that they took Batman's rogue gallery and integrated it into the plot was flawless. But again, it kind of fell into that trap that Cape Crusader had, where there were a couple of places where I was like, why are we going here? This scene doesn't need to be as long as it is. Like, it went on a couple of bunny trails before it found the real story and what it was trying to build towards. I would have liked a little bit more streamlining there.
Yeah, I definitely will agree with you there. I think that the story, especially in the beginning, is thrown and out of whack, but maybe you're supposed to feel like Batman as if you like have no idea what you're supposed to do, knowing that you've officially time traveled into 15/16, maybe even 14th century Japan. Like, what do I do? Where am I? How do I get out of this? And, you know, it was also
with what they're wearing, I would say it's actually more in the 1800s.
Okay.
Just from, because he mentions the Christian missionaries, and I feel like the main Christian missionary presence in the East at that point was in the 1800s, when you had the Victorian era and everyone was going over to the southeast of Asia and taking stuff back to England. So there were a lot of foreigners there at that point. I don't know about the earlier eras, but I know that the 1800s there were a lot of foreigners there.
Okay. What did you think of the voice cast choices in this film?
I liked them for the most part. I felt like Damien wasn't quite grumpy enough, but I don't know how much of that was the writing and how much of that was the acting choice of the actor. He also sounded a little bit too old, but I really did like who they chose for, like, they chose a perfect person for the Joker. I actually had to check and see if it was Mark Hamill. They did a really great job with Harley Quinn, with Batman, with Catwoman. Dick Grayson's voice, like, he just says, "We got you," and I'm like, "Ah, there he is!"
Yeah, I definitely appreciated a lot of the voices. I mean, I always get very excited when a new voice is chosen to play the Joker, because when you think about Joker and you think about animation, you immediately go to Mark Hamill. But you take a look at some of the actors that they have chose to play the Joker in recent film projects that they've done, like John DiMaggio voicing Joker in Batman Under the Red Hood, or Michael Emerson voicing the Joker in The Dark Knight Returns, which just creeped me the hell out. Tony Hale from Arrested Development and Veep. What a choice. I never imagined Tony Hale in this kind of a role, voicing Joker the way that he did. And Tara Strong voicing Harley. Now, I have a lot to say about Tara Strong. She is one of the greatest voice actresses of our generation. But she first voiced Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, and I hated her. I thought that she was so over the top and so out of place. I didn't like her in that movie. But in Batman Ninja, it's so over the top. They're so out of place. Harley Quinn, voiced by Tara Strong, just works. She is great in this movie. And Will Friedle comes back to voice Red Robin, which was such a treat for me, being the Batman Beyond fan that I am.
Aw, that's cool. Yeah, Harley is an interesting character for me because she is probably one of my least favorite in the Batman mythology. Like, it's the Joker and then Holly of my least favorites. But I thought Tara Strong did an incredible job voicing Harley, capturing that kind of original essence that you got in the Batman animated series that people associate with Harley. It was fun. I didn't hate her as much in this movie as I could have. I feel like she's always over the top and out of place, just in my personal opinion. Like, 9 times out of 10, you don't need Harley Quinn. She just is there because she makes the money.
Right. So along with the story itself, there's also just a great tribute to anime in general.
Yeah.
If you think that it couldn't get any more zany and wacky, let me tell you, it gets so zany and wacky thanks to the Joker and Gorilla Grodd. I mean, the fact that they actually bring the mecha to 18th century Japan is just so crazy and out there. It
is. It was, because when I started this movie, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those movies where you just have to suspend your disbelief and go along with the story. And I'm so glad I did that at the beginning, because if I hadn't have done that, I would have been like, why are we having fighting houses? But at the same time, it is something that is so quintessentially Japanese anime. There are so many shows about mechas and so many shows about combining to create one giant creature. It was so, like, such a throwback.
Yeah, that goes back to Voltron and Big O and even the Power Rangers. It's like, you know that it's coming.
Yeah.
That's one of the few things I love about it. And I also have to say that I also did enjoy Grey Griffin as Catwoman, and I think that she was, out of all the designs, the best one. Because, as I said to you before we went on the air, my favorite thing about her is the Dingle Bell collar.
Mm-hmm.
Love it because again, like, you love the fact that there were a lot of Japanese minds and hands in part of this project, and they really wanted to try and bring the culture of Japanese into this movie. You can't get more pop culture of Japanese, if it wasn't the Dingle Bell with the collar, you should have just slapped like a Hello Kitty decal on the back of Selena's shirt.
Oh, Selena would not wear Hello Kitty. That's too bright. I feel like it's funny because this was of the three, I felt like this was the one where I liked Selena the best, but at the same time, it's also where I had the most issue with her as a character. Like, in the 60s shows, I could kind of push aside her being so fickle and being so, like, where the wind blows, because I felt like that's where she was as a character in that time period. But then going through, like, into today and the stuff that came in the 90s and the 2000s and the aught 10s, Selena is much more of an anti-hero, and she is much more of, like, yes, she looks out for her own interest, but also she's someone who ends up choosing on the side of right more often than not. I felt like the deception that she had going back to Grodd was just out of character for the Selena that I know. I don't think she would have done that if this had been, like, in the comics. That's not something she would have done. She would have stuck with Bruce.
I loved how you said that her actions are depending on how the wind blows, because that is such a great little hat tip to Batman and Harley Quinn, that movie. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
There is such a funny line, because in that movie, I highly recommend it if you want to see the Batman animated series go in such a weird direction. Harley is supposed to be working with Batman and Nightwing, and the best part of the movie is when she's trying to gain Batman's trust, and she does it again, and she finally asks him why, and he says, because I don't trust you, Harley. Your whole action could swing on a dime if the wind changes, or what if it's Thursday? Like, I just thought that it was such a great idea. It's such a funny line. So the fact that it brought that nostalgia factor from the animated series back to me. I recommend Batman and Harley Quinn. It's really funny. But there were a couple of things about this movie that I really did not like, and I think one of the things that I wish that could have happened was I was really surprised they didn't put that girl into the story. I think that would have been such a great idea to do. I was like,
they should have. They really should have.
Like, why the Red Hood? I didn't understand
that. Because, I mean, when you think of Bruce and you think of Bruce's family and the people who are in the core, you're going to think of the 4 Robins. So I really do agree with the fact that we had all 4 Robins there, because if Bruce is going to be going through crap, the boys are going to be there with him. I do agree, though, because especially since we have such a, like, male-studded cast, there are so many male characters in there, and the only two real female characters were Selena and Harley Quinn. So Batgirl would have been a really good addition. However, I don't think the plot would have gone the way that it went if Barbara had been there, because she's on the level of Bruce when it comes to plotting and planning things and making sure things don't go wrong.
Yeah, and also I know that I'm also very happy that you specifically talked about those couples of female characters, because another one of the really bad parts about this film is that all the other members of the Rogues Gallery that are in this movie, including Poison Ivy, are practically non-existent. I mean, Penguin, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, and Deathstroke, of all villains, they don't really have such a strong part of this plot.
I don't think they were there to really be a part of the plot. I don't think we had, like, with the plot being the way it was, I don't think we had the room to really go in and explore the other three the way we did the Joker and the way we did kind of Two-Face and Gorilla Grodd. But I think they were there more for the fans and the fact that they needed those as placeholders, and so they chose the most iconic ones they could think of. Why they chose Deathstroke, I'm not entirely... I know he's a little bit more involved in Batman right now, but, like, I could have thought of several different ones that I would have chosen outside of Deathstroke.
Yeah, like, I personally want... I mean, you know me. I would have wanted...
The Riddler.
But we did get Bane as a sumo wrestler. That was actually pretty fun.
That was so fun. I was like, yep, that is exactly what Bane would do. Exactly.
Yeah, actually, my favorite character in this whole movie is Alfred. I love Alfred in this movie.
Alfred is always good. Alfred never disappoints.
I know. I just loved him in this movie, but I also, rewatching the movie, there was a part of the story that I didn't even think about, and I actually really thought that it added a great deal to Batman. I loved the fact that Batman felt so helpless without his tech. You know, and it's so funny because when people talk about why they love Batman so much, they love the fact that his superpower is his brain, his mind. But I love the fact that they actually tried to show that even Batman can be over-relying on things like his utility belt. And the fact that he actually has to go back to basics in this movie really gives us a better look at Batman and giving us the opportunity to people to understand that Batman is more than just his car and his gadgets.
Yep, exactly. And also, that's a recurring theme that you see in Batman, because anytime he starts to start relying on stuff like that too much, something is going to happen in the plot. We are continually, like, having Bruce be stripped down to just his bare essentials in the comics. So that you're highlighting the fact that, like, almost every Batman story it always comes down to, this is who Bruce is, and he's able to think his way out of this. He can't necessarily muscle his way out of it.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't really... I mean, like, I like the fact that it sort of was a small driver of the plot, but that whole Bat clan, I don't know. To me, it felt a little out of place, but at the same time, I understood the reason why they were in this story was to assist Batman in adapting to his surroundings in this film.
Yeah, I think that definitely, like, I don't know, he would have needed an army from somewhere. So I know that he needed, like, there is that fact. But they really were such a small part of the story. I don't know that they needed to make it such a big deal.
Because once again, that is sort of like it's so funny how throughout these, so far, 3 of these films, there are so many tributes to The Dark Knight Returns, but it's no surprise because it's one of the greatest Batman stories ever told. The Knights of Batman is also a tribute to The Dark Knight Returns, because that's what the mutant gang becomes, the Sons of Batman.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was a necessary addition to the plot, but I think maybe we spent a little too much time on it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I hate saying that, but...
Agree with you. And I will say that we did get a very fun ending. I liked the way the movie ended when they finally got back to where they needed to be, and Batman was going to, like, as Bruce Wayne was going to that big event. And
that was funny.
He goes on the horse and buggy. It's just really cute.
It was such an over the top ending, and it was over the top in a very, like, anime way. And I really appreciated that. Like, nowhere else are you going to get a giant house robot fighting a giant chibi monkey.
Yes! Oh my god, the monkeys! I forgot about the monkeys.
Yeah, that was one of those, I was like, this is so off the wall and ridiculous, but we're gonna go with it, I guess. And so much of Japanese anime is, this is off the wall and ridiculous, but we're going with it. We're gonna stick to our guns, even though it makes no sense.
It was Babel of Monkeys Gone Wild. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm really glad that I did revisit the movie because, especially through the discussion that we just had, there were definitely a lot of good things that I completely missed the first time around in the movie, but I think that that's the downfall of this movie as a whole, because you're just so enveloped in the aesthetics and the atmosphere, you don't really pay attention to the story because you're just in awe of what you're watching.
No, I feel like the aesthetic really overshadows the story, and it's supposed to, because I feel like it's more about the aesthetic in this movie than the story. I love the part, I just thought of the part where they're like relaying information, and it's like one of those old games where you've got the character that's talking and the dialogue going underneath, and then there's another character talking and the dialogue, and I just, like, that threw me back so far. I loved it.
Great. Yeah. So honestly, I still feel that if I'm going to rate this movie, I'm going to rate it a 2.5 stars out of 4. And that just puts me in the middle. Like, it's not that I don't like the movie at all. I definitely felt a lot more negative about it the first time around, just because I guess my problem was I was expecting too much.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, seeing it the second time, it wasn't as bad as I remembered seeing it the first time. So I'm glad that I got the opportunity to revisit it. And I feel that this hopefully could be like a fine wine, which means it only gets better the more you watch it. And as an owner of all of these movies, you know, I'll definitely give it another watch somewhere down.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2.5 stars out of 4 for me.
I'm gonna, and this will probably surprise you, but I'm actually gonna give it a 4 out of 5 stars, just because between the nostalgia that I had that threw me back to so many parts of my childhood being involved in Japanese media, despite my problems with Catwoman, I think that this was the best version of Catwoman that I've seen in the 3 movies that she's in. And the fact that, like, even though the story was really far out there, I liked where it took the characters. I liked the version of Bruce that we get in this, because he's a more trusting version of Bruce, and that's, like, my favorite version of Bruce, is the Bruce that's like, okay, well, I have this family, so we'll work with them.
Okay. Well,
So.
you know something? We are not robots here. We're allowed
Obviously.
to think about however we want towards anything that we see or listen to or read. So it's nice to know that because of the fact that you have those nostalgic feelings, that you were able to actually appreciate it in certain areas for myself and maybe others couldn't. Because that's what I always say. It's like, if I watched 500 videos of 500 different people reviewing the exact same movie or book, I know that I'm going to appreciate each and every one of them, because it will be a rarity if 2 people could truly be in sync with all of their thoughts on a finished product. So we're definitely making good time, and I don't know about you, but this is such a great conversation. I'm so glad we're doing this. I am excited to talk about the last movie in this.
Yes.
Because this was something that just threw me for a loop. And then Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans gets announced. That's the next movie.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
And I didn't watch any of these shows, but I'm definitely going to be interested in getting this movie and watching it, because I'm just very curious how they're going to do this. But it is the 80th anniversary of Batman, but it is also the 35th anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, I don't know, I knew that Nickelodeon owned them, but apparently DC Comics has done a great deal of work with the Ninja Turtles recently in comic books. So when I found out that they were going to make a movie called Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, let me just say that my inner child leapt out of my body and wanted to know when it was going to hit the shelves, because you have Batman Return of the Caped Crusaders did get me excited, but oh man, this one shattered my feelings towards that movie. I was so excited for this film, and I'm just going to say this right now. Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it didn't disappoint in the slightest.
No, it definitely didn't. I really like one of my favorite things about Batman is the family aspect that he brings to it, and the fact that he has, like, for someone who is like, I'm a loner, he sure can't be alone to save the life of him. And I really like the fact that we get to see him have to deal with yet another set of teenagers and just be like, well, I guess this is my life now. Like, he is so hilarious working with teenagers and working with, like, younger proteges. And so seeing that happen with another set of characters that I'm also familiar with was so much fun.
I mean, I'll tell you, when you think about, because I know that we recently touched upon what Batman is like today compared to what Batman was like back during the Silver Age of comics. So you get excited for the fact that these two franchises are coming together, but at the same time, you are terrified because you have no idea if this is going to work. But in this movie, it works.
Oh, see, I had no doubt just because I'm so used to him having to deal with Damian and John Kent and Tim and Jason and Dick. Like, he is continually having to deal with younger characters, and when he is written well, and he's not just like, when he's written well, he is so good at doing that. So that's one of my favorite things about Bruce is that he finds people and he brings them up to his level.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the story as a whole is pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was perfect for this specific crossover. I always get nervous when it comes to a crossover because you never know how it's going to turn out. I mean, there are some that do work beautifully, like I still remember when they finally announced that The Simpsons were going to be Family Guy. And it worked very well. Very well. So I loved the plot. I loved the setting. But I think one of the few things I loved the most about this film was the chemistry between characters, both the heroes and the villains. I loved how the Gotham Knights and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sort of created little cliques in the grouping.
I know.
I have to say that my favorite two, I love the fact that Batgirl and Donnie found a
that was so perfect.
Yeah, I loved that Mikey had a brotherhood that had like a father-son bonding with Alfred. I loved that Damian gets the pairing off with Raph. I thought that was wonderful because it's like you see this hulking beast of a turtle and you see this tiny little boy, but they have so much respect for one another. That's what I love so much about that. And I also thought that the pairing of Leonardo and Batman was great. I thought that it worked beautifully.
Yeah, it was. And speaking of like bringing Damian in, I was so happy that Damian was in, but like it was so natural to have Ra's al Ghul be one of the bad guys in this movie. Like, as soon as we saw him, I was like, oh, okay, this makes complete and total sense. Like, I think of the three, this is the one that had the strongest storyline. It was the one that was the most well thought out, I feel. Or not of the three, of the four movies that we've watched. And so, like, just the way that you could tell how well they had thought through who is going to be an asset to this movie, who's going to work with each of these turtles, who's going to work opposite Shredder. So, and there definitely was like, you definitely had a meeting of the minds between each of the pairings, and also you had but they also had, they were similar enough that there were also conflicts between them that heightened their weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you had Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul, however people pronounce it.
Oh, it drives me nuts. I mean, I can't argue with Damian calling him Ra's al Ghul, but like it's always been Ra's and will always be Ra's for me.
Okay, yeah, because I think of Ra's al Ghul just because I go back to the animated series, and that's what he was called in the animated series. The first time I ever heard him be called Ra's al Ghul was in Batman Begins. Never heard him called as Ra's, but...
Interesting. I don't remember him being called Ra's, but I also don't remember any of the episodes that had him in the animated series.
Yeah, you gotta revisit some of them. They happened in season 3. That was the first time I ever got introduced to Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul. But yeah, I mean, it made total sense. The League of Shadows teams up with the Foot Clan. Like, how could you find a more perfect matching?
Perfect! Perfect! The only more perfect matching was Babs and Donnie. Let's be honest. They were so on point and hilarious together. You just have two giant nerds fighting crime together, and I loved it.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to know if this actually threw you for a loop. In the opening sequence, did you think that that was Barbara, or did you think that that was April in the movie?
In the opening sequence, I did think it was April at the very beginning, but then she opened her mouth and I was like, oh no, that's Babs.
Yeah, because I was like, we'll get to April a little bit later, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The dynamics of the characters is wonderful, and I just loved that they wanted to, I think that the Turtles in this specific movie were a blend of the cartoon Turtles from the 80s and even the 2003, but there's also a great deal of the movie Turtles in this movie as well. Like, I love that there's so much nostalgia in this movie to the point where Mikey himself is gushing over nostalgia. That's to a certain degree, it's sort of a meta moment, you know?
Can we talk about all of the guys seeing the Batmobile and absolutely starting drooling? That was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, it's a great scene. Yeah, I love how they go, I think it belongs to that guy. Or how Mikey knows that the Penguin is a villain, but he loves the fact that his umbrella does all those crazy things.
That was so funny.
Yeah, because, and you want to know something? You expect that. You expect that from Mikey entirely.
Obviously, he just thinks things are cool. He doesn't care whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, but the one thing that I was very happy about in terms of the villains in this movie was, as someone who grew up with the 80s cartoon, Shredder is not one of the more serious villains. But not only did I like the fact that they did in fact make him a very serious villain in this movie, he was a equal to Batman fighting wise. I loved the fact that in their first encounter, Shredder beats him, and Shredder actually leaves Batman injured severely. I loved that.
I liked that too, but for me, it was more about the fact that, like, that is such a typical Batman story where he will encounter something for the first time, not know how to deal with it, and then the rest of the story is him thinking his way out of the problem and figuring out how to deal with it. I really appreciated the fact that it was so, like, despite the fact that we're doing this random, weird-seeming mashup between Batman and the Turtles, it still was such a Batman storyline.
Yeah, and I also will say, once again, and I think it's more so in this movie than all the four that we've talked about, this one is Alfred's best.
Oh my gosh.
The scene where he's like, I prepared a fine meal for them and they want to order pizza. Like,
you would think, having raised 4 boys, he would be used to this by now.
I know, but it's just so, I just love Alfred in this movie. And also, not just is there great nostalgia for Batman, there is a great deal of nostalgia for Ninja Turtles. One of the best parts of that scene is when Alfred comes to them, he says, would anyone care for some napkins? And all the turtles go, what for? That's right from Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. And the whole thing with the story of the ooze in this movie and how Barbara can't deal with the sound of the word ooze. That reminded me of Allison Hannigan in How I Met Your Mother and the word moist.
I mean, you can't blame them for either of those words. So, like...
Yeah, but I just love how she's constantly calling it, like how they constantly say ooze. She's like, it's a mutagen. Like, I just love that.
And that is such a Babs trait, too, to be like, it has a proper name, use it.
Yeah. Also was very happy that they actually gave her the Broad Street outfit. I like that outfit rather than the one that you have in the animated series. You know, that's actually something that we never really touched upon, and we'll do that right now. I'm quite surprised that out of all four of these movies, this is the only movie that she's in. I was really surprised they didn't have any nostalgia points to Yvonne Craig in the Adam West Batman films that we discussed earlier, you know?
Interesting. I feel like Babs is a character that quite often, I mean, like if you've read the comics and seen the show, she's someone you're going to think about and you're going to know about. But I feel like Batgirl is one of the ones that quite often gets shoved to the side in Batman stories, that people, like, they think Batman, they think the four Robins, the four boys that are Robins, they don't think about the fact that, like, there's a girl Robin. They don't think about Duke. Like, they're not, I don't think she is as solidified yet in the Batman mythology as some of the other characters that we have seen. And I think part of it is because of how her character is treated.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to say that Bruce Timm, on the other hand, to defend these specific animated projects, Bruce Timm was one of the only people that really brought Robin and Batgirl to the forefront and actually made them serious characters, you know? So I'll take whenever, because I was always one of those people that defended Robin, because everybody thought that Robin was, you know, not necessarily needed. He's, you know, the campy sidekick. But I love the fact that even from the Batman animated series days, that Bruce Timm took these two specific characters seriously, to the fact that he made a beautiful two-part origin story of Robin in a flashback. That's one of the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series as well. And as the character that is always there, along with Batgirl, to prevent Batman from crossing that line in that animated series episode, it is Batman that has to prevent Robin from crossing that line. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I remember that too. If you're talking about the animated series, I remember that particular set of episodes.
Yeah, I believe that episode duology. I don't know if it's called Old Wounds. That might be a different one, because there is also the episode in the last season where Nightwing is talking to the Tim Drake Robin about how he decided to stop being Robin, and that's also a very brilliant episode, and it does involve Batgirl as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, then the story gets into the crazy side, where Shredder goes to Arkham, of all places, because apparently the Joker is in on this scheme as well. And I will say that this is also one of the best uses of Batman's rogues gallery in such a crazy way. But it starts off, honestly, one of my favorite scenes is when Shredder walks by Harley Quinn's cell, and then she goes, "Yeah!" Oh! And all she wants is to just to make sure that her lipstick isn't smudged in his mask. I loved that.
That is such a Harley thing to do. That was really funny. I didn't mind having her in this movie either, but that's because we only saw a little bit of her. But yeah, like you said, that kind of little like nostalgic walk through the rogues gallery was brilliant. And obviously, in a movie like this, you're gonna have to have the Joker at least make an appearance, because you've got one of the most iconic, or one of the, at least for me, when I think about the Turtles, you've got one of the most iconic turtle villains, which is Shredder, and then you've got the Joker, who is one of the villains that everybody thinks about when they think Batman.
And also, what takes place in this part of the movie is probably something that was the most creative. I was like, when I saw that they were doing a plot to mix TCRI mutagen with the Joker's laughing gas, I'm like, oh god, that is not going to end well.
No, okay, here's my issue with that. They were getting dinosaurs out of it, and elephants, and lions, and all of that, and I'm just like, shouldn't they just be getting a whole bunch of different types of monkey?
Yeah.
Or ape?
Well, that goes back. Well, that's the interesting thing. That's like one of those, if anything, that's the plot hole in this story, because in the Ninja Turtles world, the person who interacts with the ooze turns into a man-beast hybrid based on the last animal that they came in contact with.
Okay, that makes sense then. Okay.
And this is completely thrown out the window, and more so, it is an interesting take, though. It is now the person becomes the creature hybrid that it most identifies with. Like, Mr. Freeze becomes a polar bear. Scarecrow becomes a big crow. Joker becoming a snake didn't work with me. Harley Quinn, it just didn't make sense.
Harley Quinn as a hyena, it made absolute sense, but the Joker as a snake, I was just like, this, okay, I mean, he is a snake, but that's a choice. That's definitely a choice.
Maybe it's just because of the fact that he has the Joker venom, poisonous snake, etc.
I mean, that does make sense. That does make sense. But that was a little bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah. Yeah, but I loved that scene in Arkham Asylum. I loved what they did. I also loved what happens to Batman in that part of the movie. It's definitely scary. But I also loved how the whole team comes together and tries to make sure that Batman does get back home alive and back to his original self. And also, speaking of the mutants, there's another little thing in this movie that I personally love. And that was the fact, and we'll get into this a little bit later on. Actually, this will be part of it. Additional characters, because we get a great deal of characters from Batman's world, but we get a nice couple of characters from the Turtles' world as well. And I think one of the biggest surprises was Baxter Stockman. And I loved the fact, well, Baxter Stockman is the Fly, that big fly.
Okay.
But you see, if you're a fan of the cartoon, you'll know who Baxter Stockman is, and you'll know that he does in fact become a fly. But the fact that they got a voice actor to try and put him into a Jeff Goldblum persona is absolute genius.
Yeah, that was...
Because Jeff Goldblum played the Fly in 1987. So it made so much sense to actually get someone to voice a Jeff Goldblum sounding voice for Baxter Stockman, because he doesn't sound like that in the original cartoon. I will tell you that right now.
Yeah, the Fly was an interesting. Stockman was an interesting character to have. I was like, oh, okay, this. But it also was like, oh yeah, this seems like something you would have on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Exactly, because I would highly recommend another Ninja Turtles movie for you if you just want to really get enveloped in the zaniness. You should definitely watch the 25th anniversary special film Turtles Forever. Basically, in that movie, the 2003 cartoon Turtles meet up with the 1989 cartoon Turtles, and it's just flipping back through different worlds. It's crazy zany, and nostalgia there, but I just loved how this story does get shaped, because then you get the final showdown and you get the final act with making sure that Gotham doesn't get affected by this mutagen laughing gas hybrid. And I just loved how the fact that they brought out the turtle van, and there was another great little tribute to the Turtles movies when Donnie delivers the shot and he says Bossa Nova. That's right out of the first movie. It's great. But one of the things... Oh, okay. Before we get into that, what was your thought on that ending?
I liked it. I thought that was so... you're talking about with the pizza and everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's... When I think about that was so perfect, and the fact that like it shows Bruce and how when he puts his mind to it can work with teenagers and can be an empathetic character. I love the fact that they're like, "Can we stay?" And he's like, "Sure, go ahead, have pizza." And then he eats pizza like a hipster, but you know, it was so funny though. Like I like the ending.
Yeah, but I think I may have. I don't know if you actually watched the movie till after the credits roll.
Oh, no, I probably didn't, because I had to, like, get it right back to the library.
Okay, then I'm going to have to let you know something.
Go ahead.
There might be a sequel.
That makes sense.
Because do you remember the final showdown between Batman and Shredder?
Vaguely.
Shredder falls into that.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Joker. So at the end of the credits, Shredder rises from the rubble, and then he starts to laugh like the Joker.
I mean, that's what happens when you go into the Joker gas, I guess.
So,
but yeah, that is perfect for a sequel. That would be a brilliant idea for a sequel.
And I'm kind of happy. I'm hoping that it gets greenlit, because as a Turtles fan, there were a couple of things in this movie that I wish there would have been, because I really wanted April, Splinter, and Casey Jones in
Yeah.
this movie. I was very upset that we did get a great deal of Turtle tribute and Turtles lore, but I think we didn't get enough of it. We got more Batman, if anything. But then again, that's because it was the Turtles in Batman's world. So my question is, if there is going to be a sequel, does that mean that Batman is going to go into the Turtles world next? And what the hell are we going to get?
That would make a lot of sense. I feel like I didn't mind the missing characters as much because I also understood the fact that we've already got 4 characters coming from the Turtles world, and we've got 4 characters that are from Batman's world, kind of. And so I think if we had had April, Casey, and Splinter in there, it would have been character overload. The storyline would have been bloated. So I think this is good as a setup, and then you add those characters later.
Yeah, because I'm really curious to see what will happen. And the question is, will Batman, if he does in fact end up being in a sequel, will he venture into New York City via the Turtles alone, or will he have people with him? Like, will Batgirl and Robin come with him? Will Nightwing show up? You know, like there's so many interesting things that could possibly happen with a sequel. Or will other Batman's Rogues Gallery villains go into the Turtles world? Will we see other characters like Bebop and Rocksteady and Krang? Will we see Shredder's daughter Karai? Like, I feel that with what we got as this specific film's finished product, the sequel is just, right now for me, up in the air because they have so much to play with right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about having 2 different sets of characters that have so much history behind them. I mean, granted, Batman has history for days. Like, you could just keep pulling villains out of the encyclopedia and you could go on for days. I don't know as much about the Turtles, but like there is definitely a history established there, and I like how they merged the 2. I do think that if it's going to be Batman going to New York City, it would probably be because he's tracking down one of his particular rogues.
Yeah, but I definitely believe that this Shredder will definitely take its role in there because he's definitely not Super Shredder a la Ninja Turtles 2, but it's definitely an interesting version of Shredder. And also, I love the credits in that movie. I loved how they crossed comic books of Batman and Ninja Turtles together.
I remember that. That was so cool.
Yeah. So honestly, I will give Batman versus Ninja Turtles a 4 stars out of 4. I've already rewatched this movie so many times. I just love watching it. It's just such a fun ride. And that's one of the few things that I say at the end of the day, as long as I just had such a fun time, I don't care if the movie is Oscar-worthy phenomenal or if it's so bad it's good. I just want to walk away from that movie with a fun time had.
Yeah, and this definitely was a fun time. I think I would also give this one 4 out of 5 stars, just because I really, really enjoyed it. Of the 4, it was the one I think I enjoyed the most. Granted, it probably that some of that might have to do with the fact that they didn't do anything weird to Catwoman's character. If Catwoman had been in it, that could have brought the rating down or up. We don't know. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I think it's one like this and Batman Ninja are both 2 that I would want to like share with my friends and watch with them.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I would definitely recommend Batman versus Ninja Turtles to so many different people because I know so many people that grew up with both franchises, including myself. I mean, when your childhood comes to life in such a great way and it just gives you so many nods to all the things that you love about these 2 franchises, I'm just like saying to myself, how can you lose?
Yeah.
But anyway, that pretty much wraps up the show tonight. I just want to say that this was such a great conversation. It was so awesome to discuss these specific movies because I was very curious. Even when I was talking to Bryan about this, I could definitely say that there were some points where he was a little bit nervous to talk about them, especially Batman Ninja, because he did not like it at all. But, I'm so glad that you were able to give me some time out of your day to do this live show with me because I had such a great conversation with you, Margaret. I know that we talk a lot on DMs on Twitter and we talk in the comments, but I just feel that you are such a great conversationalist and I would love to do more live shows with you about anything in the future.
Oh, well, thank you. I really enjoy doing this because, I mean, it's Batman. I always enjoy talking about Batman. I could talk about Batman for hours.
And anything that can add some different dimensions about yourself to your channel for your subscribers is always a positive thing, because I think that the more versatile we are and the more diverse we are with our interests, I feel that we can just connect with so many different people. But anyway, everybody, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch. I also want to thank Margaret for stepping in as guest host on this program. The next episode will be in the middle of August, everybody, and I did actually hear from Bryan. He said that there is no way that he is going to miss this next episode, because we're going to be talking about all 4 of the Bruce Timm direct animated movies. So that's Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Sub-Zero, Batman Mystery of the Batwoman, and Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. He doesn't need to dedicate time to watching these because they are very much in his brain, because he's watched them so many times. So I'm really glad that Bryan will be back. But as I said, I'm hoping that Margaret will be back on my channel, whether it's discussing Batman or anything else that we share commonalities in. So all of Margaret's information will be in the description box below, and who knows, maybe Margaret will want to have this posted on her channel as well. I'm always willing to share. But anyway, everybody, thank you all so much for watching tonight, and I will see you in the next one.
Bye!
Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.